Everyone, I'm Kaycee and I'm an investigator in my second year here at HOS. So I'm going to be talking briefly about a Lewisham Council case that I recently determined on, which I wanted to share as an example of good landlord practice. So the complaint is about the landlord's handling of the residents' concerns about a communal boiler system operating in a basement beneath her home and theft of her electricity supply. I should say that while I did find maladministration in the landlord's complaint handling, there was no maladministration found for either of these substantive issues. This was a particularly sensitive case due to the resident having suspected undiagnosed mental health issues. I should note here that the resident disputes that this is the case. The investigation therefore focused on the landlord's handling of issues for which it had no evidence of their existence, aside from the resident's reports. By way of background, the resident lived in a ground floor flat within a block. The block used to have a communal boiler system before this was replaced some years ago with individual boilers that served each flat exclusively. The resident raised concerns to the landlord about a communal boiler system she believed to be operating in a basement underneath her home. She stated she experienced noise and vibrations in her home that affected her health, caused her injury, and damaged her belongings. She also reported separate concerns that a bypass or override system was siphoning off her electrical supply and diverting it to the neighbouring flats. She believed she was paying for her neighbour's electricity and that when she turned her boiler off, her neighbours were left without a supply. The resident believed the landlord was complicit in both of these situations arising. The resident raised a complaint with the landlord, and over a period of 1 to 2 years, the landlord took several steps to investigate and reassure the resident that there was no basement beneath her flat, no communal boiler, and that she was only paying for her own electricity. So what was positive about the landlord's approach? The landlord did not merely dismiss the resident's concerns when she raised them. Even when they were satisfied, there was no evidence to support them. It responded promptly to her communications, visited her regularly, carried out inspections of a boiler and commissioned a full electrical report. The landlord also took the resident's vulnerabilities into consideration when responding to her. Upon noticing she had left it a 1-star review on the internet, it took a proactive approach and visited her to try and resolve the situation. Over the course of events, it proactively called, emailed and visited the resident to respond to her concerns and provide advice and reassurance as often as needed. It went beyond what we may ordinarily have expected it to do. Upon inspecting the resident's boiler, it identified some faults and took the initiative to replace the boiler rather than repair it to increase the resident's confidence. During its visits, it tried to visually demonstrate to the resident that her concerns were unfounded. It showed her that the door she suspected led to the basement beneath her flat was actually a small electric meter cupboard. It showed her how her bathroom radiator was the last radiator on the loop in her flat. To witness the sound and vibrations she was experiencing without success. The landlord, having become concerned about the resident's mental health, was mindful of its safeguarding duties. It broached the sensitive topic with the resident directly, with a view to referring her to relevant services for support. It made her referrals to local NHS mental health service. However, this was unfortunately to no avail due to the lack of the resident's cooperation. This was beyond the landlord's control. When the resident became distressed about the landlord's concerns, the director wrote her a letter to apologise and explain. This demonstrated a commitment to supporting the resident and respecting her experience, despite the challenges it was encountering in managing her communications. The landlord's approach, above all, was empathetic and patient. It demonstrated investment in the landlord-tenant relationship and recognised patterns and cycles in the resident's behaviour, renewing and repeating its advice and reassurance to her as necessary. My investigation found that in the absence of any evidence to support the resident's claims, the landlord was limited in what steps it could take to resolve the issues for her. However, it demonstrated initiative and proactiveness. It communicated well, met its obligations, and above all, it handled the situation sensitively. That comes to the end of this presentation. I hope it's been informative. If you do have any comments or questions, please feel free to drop me an email or a message on Teams.